promised protection. She sent the redcoats.
And there was, I think, generally a fear there might be some outbreak of violence between the tribes and the settlers, and to guarantee some, or to bring about some kind of stability and cohesion in the West. The Canadian government, or the Crown, sent in the police force.
The buffalo were being decimated by American hunters. The whiskey trade was claiming its victims, and tension over land ownership was rising. One of the first redcoats to encounter native people was Northwest Mounted Police Inspector James Walsh.
In meetings with the native leaders of the day, when Walsh was in the area, his very words were, "I will lay down my life to protect you and the life of my men."
In 1876, Treaty Number 6 was signed. The Queen's police force was included in the treaty to ensure a fair partnership between the natives and the Queen's subjects.
Our Treaty Number 6 is a peace treaty. It is a promise to live our own way of life without interfering with each other.
And so the police force was seen as a symbol, a seriousness of the commitment made at treaty for the Crown to respect First Nation laws, and for the police force to be there as a symbol that those laws would always be respected.
To this day, the elders believe that the power that was given to the chief, he could tell the RCMP, look, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. Because they were, as the Queen promised, I will give you an Indian agent to take care of your needs, and I will give you the RCMP to protect you, and they're there for you.
I think the relationship changed in part, in large part, because of the evolution of the Canadian colony, because there was almost a total disconnect between the way Indian affairs were being administered and conceptualized and the way the treaty was understood.
Children were removed from their homes and sent to residential schools. Parents were arrested for leaving the reserve without a permit.
Under the terms of the Indian Act, it fell out mostly on the RCMP to enforce these laws. And again, the question of mobility, the question of being able to make a livelihood, the freedoms that First Nation people were able to enjoy for centuries prior were all of a sudden taken away by the RCMP, and these are the police forces enforcing these laws, and this was seen as directly contrary to the role that they were supposed to have undertaken vis-a-vis First Nation people.
The unfortunate part about being a federal police force is that you are the enforcement arm of the government. We are not at the table making laws. However, when laws are made, we're required to enforce them. And some of the laws that have been made have been found to be very oppressive.
Clearly, it was a breach of treaty. I don't think there's any other way that you can characterize it.
There is a gap there somewhere that at one time the relationship was very bad with the RCMP, because the RCMP were there to pick you up, take you to jail.
The police were the big shots, huh? They were the law, and they look at you as if you were a criminal, huh? They wouldn't smile and this and that. You know, there was a lot of fear in the RCMP in them days.
The Lac La Biche RCMP detachment is one of the busiest in the province. 15 members police 11,000 people.
We want to provide good service to the people in the communities and also the people here in town. And it's difficult sometimes with the resources we have. For example, the Heart Lake First Nation is approximately a 45-minute road trip from Lac La Biche. Kikino Métis settlement's a 30-minute drive. The Beaver Lake Cree Nation is actually very close, so we're able to get down there quite often. It's important to make a presence in the First Nations communities, and we realize that, but it's hard when you're dealing with other things that are happening right here as well.
All the restaurants are all packed, the hotels are all full, so it tells me we've got quite a few people in town.
Hello?
Hello?
Is this Lac La Biche?
Yes, it is.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
I have a complaint at Truckers.
Oh, okay.
There's a gentleman online. He says there's a guy that is attempting to sell crack cocaine at the bar, and he's willing to point him out to you if you come in through the back door.
The guy's in there right now. The complainant is in a red plaid shirt.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I called in. There's this guy at the bar trying to sell me some crack cocaine.
Yeah. Are you the guy?
I am the
Okay.
guy.
So what exactly did he say to you?
Well, I walked up to the bar. I ordered a rum and coke. He turned to me and says, "Do you want to buy some coke?" And I said, "No, I'd like a rum and coke." And he says, "No, crack cocaine." And he pulled out of his vest. He opened his vest. And he pulled out two little long vials.
Yeah, this guy here.
In order to be more proactive, we need more police officers to actually provide that level of service. But with just the volume of crime that's going on here, we tend to be more reactive in nature, which is not good, because you'd like to be able to get a jump on things and prevent stuff before it happens.
Just reacting and responding to calls is not good enough for communities like Beaver Lake. Community safety suffers when police are only cleaning up after the mess has already been made.
We have to have a change here. So you start getting involved in our community events, get together with people on a friendly basis, not just to be there to pick up people.
It takes a different breed of policeman to go out on these communities and make inroads.
Dennis Fraser has come home for the afternoon.
Joanne!
Hi, Fraser.
How you doing?
Not too bad.
Good,
Yourself?
Good. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Geez, it must be about a year since I've seen you.
Oh, it's been a while.
Yeah, so you're still working here, eh? When a policeman can go back to where he policed before, and they recognize you, and they give you a hug, and they ask you if you're coming back, we miss you, that is the ultimate. I remember when I was working here, we had a real team. Whenever I wanted something, I'd come and see you. And
Well, it worked both ways.
yeah, and I really enjoyed that. I missed them times.
Yeah.
Dennis Fraser spent 4 years policing the Sunchild Ochies First Nations. In 2001, Dennis left Sunchild Ochies for RCMPK Division in Edmonton to work in Aboriginal policing.
You know, I ran into Dennis a few times over a few incidents, and it really made a difference for me. He made me feel like, you know, you need help, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to arrest you, I'm here to help you. You with whatever problems you're having. You know, that kind of approach that he had really made a big difference of me, the way I looked at him as an RCMP officer.
And what I did last year is I started a scan, an environmental scan. And what that consisted of is we went to every community, every First Nations community in Alberta, and we asked them what they thought the problem is. I think in the past, we as police officers would go out to a community and we would think we knew what was best for them, what was a concern. And a lot of times we were off the mark. TJ, how you doing? Good. Your name's TJ, right?
Yep.
TJ, what grade are you in, TJ?
6.
Grade 6, already. I remember talking to you one time when I was at school here, and you wanted to be a police officer. Remember that? Remember that? Do you still want to be a police officer?
Yeah.
Really? I think that's really good. You're going to finish school? Because, you know, it's the number one thing. If you want to be a police officer, what do you got to do? Finish school. What else do you got to do? You got to finish school. Stay out of trouble. Get a driver's license. Be a good boy. We now have to be seen in the communities. We've got to be seen in the school. We've got to bring programs out. We've got to bring the DARE program out, suicide intervention programs. Anything that the community perceives to be a concern or a problem, that is what we have to focus on.
One problem the communities have said is that you don't understand us. This weekend, Dan Bradford has organized a cultural awareness retreat for RCMP members from Northern Alberta communities like Fort McMurray, St. Paul, and Wabasca Desmarais. Elder Mel Abraham is a former tribal police officer and grew up in a traditional environment in the Frog Lake First Nation. He has been invited to the Kakio Cultural Camp to serve as a cultural advisor to the officers. After a pipe ceremony begins the day, the officers are preparing the rocks for a sweat lodge ceremony.
14 rocks do come in to represent the 14 poles used in the lodge. And then, of course, you bring in 10 every round after that.
They're great teachers, and I believe that's why they're elders. Is they're there to teach and show us their culture and traditions and help us have a better understanding of their people.
After the sweat, the RCMP members meet to share stories about their experiences, struggles, and successes in the communities they police.
And people respond really well if you can say a few words, just greet them even in their own language. It really makes them feel more comfortable. Even if it's, like you said, it's a stressful situation or confrontational, just say a couple words right away. First of all, they're surprised that you can speak some of their language, and then secondly, they sort of respect that, and it sort of creates a bond right away, gets you both on the same side.
You recognize it. I'm going to go visit my dad over there, 18 miles from here in his cabin. I'm not sure if he's going to be there, but when I get there, this is what I look for. This little stick will tell me which direction he went, because he would stick it in the ground saying I went that way. The calf takes off, runs towards its mom, and it's bellowing, eh? The bull with big horns. The calf sounds like this.
Sounds like Danny.
Boom! Wow. Soup!
Yeah.
I think it's an incredible experience this weekend has been. I wish every young police officer, whether they're just starting out or 2 or 3 years into it, if they're dealing with the Aboriginal as a client, whether it's in a positive or in a negative where they're having to arrest a person, this weekend should be mandatory training.
But I think it's important for police officers and others, not only police officers, to really begin to try and understand some of the values, some of the teachings that are integral to these ceremonies. Because it's these values or teachings that really begin to identify the kind of conduct that is expected of individuals.
Understanding the values build trust. Inspector James Walsh realized that 130 years ago.
He was able to watch how the natives spoke to each other, and he adopted that. He would dress in his best uniform, and he would stand up, and he would address the council the same way that the natives addressed the council. He adopted their ways.
In Wabasca-Demery, community leaders have realized that the RCMP can be a part of a community solution to their problems.
For me, the way I think is the community has to come together and help. The RCMP can only do so much, and some of the people, the agencies, can only do so much. So the community has to do it.
So you guys ready to play Simon Says? Yeah! Okay, Simon Says, jumping. Simon Says, put your hand on your head. Okay, Simon Says, flop like a bird. Okay, stop. Okay, and then I'm going to introduce you to something as well. I got a special talking police truck as well. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Okay.
The officers have been very good about talking to them and giving them examples of how to behave and just being friendly. It makes an awful difference.
Yes, I am here. I am Radar, the talking police truck.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
Could you really talk? That is a good question. And yes, I can really talk.
The relationships built today are part of the long process of rebuilding trust between Native communities and the RCMP.
I was up at one of the schools here and visiting with the kids at recess, and one of the children comes up to me and talking to me as if I'm his best friend, and I've interacted with that child before I remember that child. So the child comes back and says, I remember you, you came and arrested my dad last night. And the fact that he could come up to me and talk to me in a positive manner and interact with me again the next day at recess, is actually a positive thing for the RCMP and for this community as well.
And I know that every community wants to feel safe and feel that their home is safe and feel that their community is safe. So it's really important that we have police within the communities and that we work together. When we work together, we get so much more accomplished. Well, I find it also is that when we go to round dances or if we go to any kind of function, that it's important for the officers to have that interaction, because it's also, a lot of them don't understand what it's about. Yeah. Take the time to ask, what is the significance of a round dancing? What does this mean? Yeah. And that goes a long way, especially when it comes down
to a relationship. You've developed a relationship with that person. He's a human being just as well as you are. He's not something that you can't touch, you can't talk to. Be careful. If he's around, you take off. If you have something to hide, But we don't want to say, well, you better be scared of this guy. Instead of having that mentality, you have the human aspect.
And one of my first calls that I ever came out here on when I first started working out here was a suicide call. I was a young fella. He was in his early 20s.
In the tone of voice, I said, hey, you're the RCMP. We got suicide problem here, a big suicide problem, and, the way I believe we can do something about it, me and you, is what I told Dennis.
I went back and I checked into the stats on suicide, and we'd had 9 suicides between both communities in a period of 2 years. And that is what both communities were alarmed at the time, that this is what we got to do something about. And working in partnership with this counselor, with chief and council from both communities, and in partnership with Ottawa, they had a suicide intervention program that I was aware of, and it was a 5-day one, and I got that program out here.
And since then we haven't had any suicides in our community, but prior to that I think we had about 3 or 4 suicides every year.
And that just goes to show that by bringing these programs out, by being proactive, by doing something other than enforcement, we can make a difference in communities. I think that we owe it to them, and that it makes us more accountable, And as a result, we just improve our credibility. Because once when you start getting credibility with First Nations people, they don't forget. They don't forget. They're a very honest, sincere people. And if they trust you, and if they like you, and if they accept you into their community, you become their policeman.
Credibility begins with communication. Communication about the problems faced today and the truth of yesterday. History will not be forgotten. Too much has happened at the hands of the RCMP.
These are impressions, images, that last a lifetime, and it's these kind of images that begin to carry within themselves the kind of perceptions, the kind of feelings, the kind of resentments that a lot of First Nation people, I think, feel from time to time against the police forces.
The RCMP are now beginning to do their part to break through the barriers created by history.
With the RCMP at one time, you just didn't bother with the RCMP, you know. Now, it's getting to the point now that we can sit down with them, and but I would like to see them more often in my community here.
Now, it's a lot different for me. In fact, I met your boss, Colin White. I went to the hospital to get my blood test, and he was ahead of me. Colin was ahead of me. And then he got up, and then he saw me there. Good morning, sir. You know what? I don't know, just like something went through me. I felt so good for, you know, a striped policeman to say, good morning, sir. The word sir, I said, good morning. I didn't know who he was, though. You know, I know he was an RCMP from Lac La Biche, but I didn't know who he was. And then away he went. And I got my blood test, and I come home, and I told the wife about it. And boy, I said, there's something new in this thing. I said, something's happening.
I think all good police officers, even way back, had a true appreciation of how important good communication is and understanding people, because our job has always been all about people and how you get along with people. That's key to being a good police officer.
There are no easy answers or hopeful promises that will satisfy communities who need better service from the RCMP. Voices must be heard and action taken. Respect isn't given to a uniform. It's earned by the person behind the badge, just like always.
Walsh tapped into and aligned himself with Native leaders of the day. He aligned himself with the people that dealt in the area at all times. He made friends with the traders. He understood not only where crime was happening, he understood the culture and was able to present himself in his communications as somebody that could be trusted. This is something that we should never forget.